People of the internet, welcome to Modern Day Debate. Tonight we are debating the ethics of abortion. We have KayFellowz and Javier crossing swords with Brent and Lingle and Josh. Going first tonight is Brent and Lingle and Josh, so I will turn it over to Brenton and Josh for their 10-minute opening statement to split between each other. So, gentle peeps, the floor is all yours for your 10 minutes, and I will start the clock at your first word.
All right, very happy to be here. Very happy to be speaking to Kay again. Kay, for those of you who don't follow her on Twitter, I do. Everybody should. She's absolutely wonderful. So I'm anticipating a fun.
Stop hitting on a man.
Well, you'd have to take that up with my wife.
If you knock her up, no abortion.
All right. So to begin. Throughout my, and by the way, so Josh is going to be ceding his time to me since he wanted to more get into the bantery stuff. But Josh is also on the Fakertarians podcast. Definitely check that out. And if you guys don't know me, my name is Brenton Lingle. I am the Ringo Award-nominated comic creator of Snow White Zombie Apocalypse and Darudi's Shadow of the People, which just got my first graphic novel funded. So, to begin. Throughout my entire life, one of the largest and most hot-button issues that has been talked about is abortion, the act of doctors taking action to prevent a pregnancy from continuing to develop. It was one of the first political issues I remember being cognizant of after overhearing a discussion between my mother and someone on the phone. I think one of the reasons why this topic is so hotly debated and of course exploited by politicians and advertisers for clicks, clout, and votes, is because we as humans have an innate tendency to protect the youngest members of our species. If anything is hardwired by nature and into our moral and ethical intuition, it is the protection of children. As a parent, I understand this all too well. But as someone who pays attention, what I also understand is that clever and immoral people often use this to manipulate us. The frequent refrain of "think of the children" is the fascists' favorite go-to move. So we need to be very careful when we approach this issue. Emotions often cloud judgment, and if anything clouds judgment more than runaway feelings, it is in-group loyalty and tribalism. As this particular wedge issue is utilized by one of the most infamous gangs of fools, thieves, and murderers ever to walk this planet's surface, and by that I'm referring to the Republican Party, we have to be incredibly careful in how we engage with this thorny and ethical question. Most of us would quite rightly say that all things being equal, if push comes to shove, it is better or more ethical that an adult be injured or die instead of a child. And since a fetus grows from a clump of cells to a living, breathing baby over the course of 9 months, many assume that a fetus is simply a very young, very small child. So you can see the argument. This is a baby. We as humans have a moral duty to protect it. Now, this is intuitive and easy to understand. However, like many intuitive and easy to understand concepts, it is very, very wrong. The thalamus, which is the part of our brain that is responsible for cognition, experience, memory, and consciousness itself, does not develop until at least 26 weeks, 6.5 months into the pregnancy. And the thalamus cannot actually function until a few weeks later, after the beginning of the 3rd trimester. An argument you often hear from pro-choice people is that a fetus is to a baby what an acorn is to a tree. Well, I'm sorry, my fellow pro-choicers, this is a terrible argument and you are 100% wrong. Because without a sufficiently developed thalamus, a fetus is more directly comparable to an acorn or a tree than to a living, breathing human baby or adult. Now, a lot gets made about the Catholic Church's official position on this issue. Life begins at conception. This is because due to the fallacy of the beard, it is difficult to find a point where the fetus goes from a fetus to a person who should be granted all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities that we all enjoy. Essentially, because we can never determine the exact point where enough grains of sand make a pile or the sufficient growth of facial hair becomes a beard, many just automatically divert to conception. But at conception, the fetus has no ability to feel anything, not pain, not pleasure. It has no consciousness. And in this respect, there's very little difference between it and any other living but inanimate matter. So if we're going to try to find a point at which a fetus becomes a person, it would seem to me that starting around 28 weeks would be a much more accurate benchmark for assigning rights and personhood than conception. However, I don't feel that this argument will be particularly convincing to those who already have had their minds made up for them by the leaders of their communities and the talking heads on the television. We are talking in the abstract. So even though I don't think that a fetus can rightly be considered a person until at least 28 weeks, we are missing something very big. And this is because the main character of our story up till now has been the fetus. And like men have been doing since time immemorial, we are forgetting the humanity of the woman. You see, being pro-life isn't simply that position. If pro-life people are serious about what they believe and what they want, they must necessarily agree that what they are really arguing for is government-enforced pregnancy. As in, the pro-life movement's political goal is not to preserve life, at least not for most of them. This doesn't actually apply to Kay.
I see you smiling.
Their goal is to empower police to violently force at gunpoint an unwilling woman to remain pregnant against her will. Essentially, what they want to do is to apply to a fetus a right that no other human has, which is the right to use somebody else's body against their will. This is usually compared to forced organ donation and usually centers around the kidney, as in whether or not it would be ethical for the government to force someone to donate a kidney to one of the 10,000 people a year who die for want of one. So it would seem to me that if you're the kind of person like myself who doesn't trust the government, it's intensely strange that one would allow the state to use its violence to violate another person's rights in this manner. If you're someone who thinks, for instance, that the government is inferior to private charity, it seems incredibly inconsistent to assume that the government would be effective at preventing abortions. Now, people will sometimes say that the government is good, but only when it is defending people's lives. But we know this isn't true. The government is really bad at defending people's lives. The state cannot protect us from terrorists. It can't protect us from mass shooters. It certainly doesn't protect us from the many children it's constantly bombing. The point is, if you want to give that power to police, you will have terrible outcomes for doctors, for women, and especially for anyone involved. Because we have seen over these past few years that police are often brutal, stupid, and, quite frankly, evil. And that is how a lot of them interact with the public. So anytime that you have a law that people won't obey, be that prohibition, the war on drugs, and if the Republicans are correct, banning guns across the country, that is a bad law. And obviously, we have seen that prohibition does not work. But to bring this back around, because we're talking really big here, I kind of want to share something personally. There's a reason I wanted to have this debate tonight. And that is because I'm a husband and a father. And I would like my son to have a little brother or sister one day. Now, the problem here is that my wife is a high-risk pregnancy. She has a chronic illness, and as a result, my son was actually born 6 weeks premature. Now, anytime she winds up getting pregnant, this is a severe threat to her life and limb. And in turn, what we're dealing with now, specifically because the Republicans are going to force Roe v. Wade ending Roe v. Wade on the country, which, by the way, doesn't want to end it. The majority of people are pro Roe v. Wade, it's just the Republicans that don't like it. What's happening now is we are actually sitting there having a conversation. Can we actually have another child? Is it right to take that big of a risk? Since oftentimes the medical things that she needs to receive in order to possibly live and to prevent me from losing my wife and my son from losing his mother are very likely to be denied to her very soon. Pregnancy is incredibly dangerous, far more dangerous than getting an abortion. And the fact is that we have seen in countries like Poland and Ireland
Malta.
Thank you.
Got about a minute left.
When abortion is criminalized, what happens is women die. Even if you have a supposition to say, okay, well, in a medical emergency, then obviously we can allow it. But the problem is that when the government phrases it like that, and they have in this most recent, in several of the recent laws, I believe the law in Texas, what happens is that doctors are reluctant to treat because they are afraid they could be charged with manslaughter or murder, and they wind up holding off on necessary care, and this leads to the mother dying time and time again. The fact is that abortion is a necessary medical procedure that needs to be available for people like my wife. And the fact is that when we talk about all of this, we have to stop thinking of the people who get these abortions as being people who simply want them because they are being irresponsible. That is not the fact. 60% of people who get abortions are parents. But on top of that, I really feel like the idea of someone who uses abortion specifically as birth control or simply just decides to abort for one reason or another, these people aren't real. Or if they are real, it probably shouldn't be parents. And I definitely wouldn't want to be their child. So,
just going to say one thing, Brent. We've actually gone over time, but the amount of rambling you do, you're like Joe Biden here. You should run for president in 2024.
Thank you. I probably will, except I'm an anarchist.
I'll be your VP. I'll be a VP.
So the point is, as I was saying, we really need to preserve this. It's very important to me. It's very important to my family, and it's very important to every woman that I know. And so, that's why I am pro-choice. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Brenton. And thank you so much, Josh, for your 10-minute opening statement. And we will go ahead and kick it over.
Like one sentence, man. You don't need to thank me for anything.
We really appreciate it.
You literally told me you'd cede your time to me.
It was a great sentence.
I know.
So
I'm trying to build on the jokes here. Come on.
Yeah.
Just want to let everybody know that we will have a 45-minute open discussion after we have our opening statements from the anti-abortion side, and then a 20-minute closing section, and then a 30-minute Q&A. So please, if you have a question or comment for the debaters, shoot it into the live chat. Tag me at Modern Day Debate. Super chats will go to the top of the list, and please keep it civil. Insults will not be read. And with that, we will go ahead and kick it over.
You've got to read the insults, especially if it's against me.
Except for the ones against Josh.
Right. Yeah, thank you very much. So listen, everyone, if you want to insult anyone, this guy here. Okay?
Unless they break TOS or our hate speech, in which case you will be banned.
Yeah, obviously don't use racist words against me.
Just say he looks like Sonic the Hedgehog. He does.
I do.
Well, there you go.
Here we go.
So at your first word, Javier or Kay, whichever one wants to go first.
Ladies first.
I actually don't have an opening statement. I prefer whenever discussing abortion that we kind of get right into the conversation. So if Javier has any opening statement that he would like to give before we go into open discussion, that's fine.
Yes, I didn't have an opening statement myself, but after listening to Brenton's opening statement, I feel as if it is my duty as an American citizen to respond. My name is Javier-Javier. I host the Javier-Javier show on YouTube, Politics, Religion, and Culture. And I am pro-life. And before I get started, I want to say that I will not insult anyone. I will not insult you because you have a difference of an opinion than I do, or you come to a different conclusion based on the facts and evidence that you viewed. I will not call you out of your name. I will not call you a fascist. I will not call you anything because I believe that we are all humans on this earth trying to figure out what the hell is going on. So with that being said, I want to point out that while it was personal that he brought up the fact that his wife is someone who is at high risk of actually risking her life by having a baby, most abortions are not on the behalf of that reason. Most abortions actually are due to convenience. Only 1% to 0.5% of people who are actually having abortions for rape, incest, or because their life is in danger out of all the people who have abortions. Not only is that the fact, the government has a duty and an entitlement to protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, earlier, my opponent said that life doesn't begin at inception, but according to Princeton University, life begins at fertilization. And I looked into this heavily, and most people, if you can't agree that life begins at fertilization, most scientists have not settled the fact on when life does begin. So I like to err on the side of caution. If we do not know when life begins, then I think it is our duty to err on the side of caution and not take a risk by destroying that life by convenience in most cases of an abortion. Not only do I think that it is a case, most of the people on the pro-choice side will make arguments such as, well, how are you going to force a woman to be pregnant? Last time I checked, women got pregnant due to sexual activity. And in most cases, like we already discussed, most women get abortions due to convenience, not out of fear of life or rape or incest. So Sorry, that doesn't work. Nobody forced her to get pregnant. She, knowing the risk in most cases, laid down with someone, and sorry, pregnancy happens due to the fact of sexual intercourse. Sorry for my explicit language. I know some people can be sensitive to that, but I'll also point out the fact. I also point out the fact that if life begins at fertilization, or we do not know when life begins, then I think it is very much the business of the government to decide whether they're going to protect that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. In the Declaration of Independence, our founders clearly spelled out the fact that the governments are instituted amongst men to protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Not only that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to those ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute a new government. Now, with that being said, if we do not know when life begins, or we do not know exactly what the government's role is in protecting life, we should err on the side of caution. If the government cannot protect the life of the unborn child, which all evidence seems to point in the fact that either life begins at fertilization or we do not know, then if the government is not protecting that life, then the government is not serving its role. Now, as far as the fetus goes, that is just a development stage of human life. And the reason I say that is because many pro-choice advocates will argue a woman's body, a woman's choice. But technically, it's not a woman's body. And the reason that it's not a woman's body is because of the fact that a baby has its own genetic DNA. Not only that, but it also shares DNA with the father as well, equally with the mother. But we would not consider that baby to be a part of the father. So would we then make the argument that fathers should be able to abort their babies? You would not make that argument. And it's clear that that baby is not a part of the father's body, even though it shares half of his genetic code. Now, I'll also point out, and I'll wrap it up here, right? Okay.
Take a deep breath.
Another argument that the the pro-choice makes is that, well, women are living in poverty, or women are suffering, or they might not be in a good condition financially to have a kid and to bring that child up into this world, and that child might grow up in poverty or whatever the case may be. But we have countless amount of evidence that shows that over the decades, people's standard of living have constantly been rising and rising and rising above. And not only that, compared to, especially in America, the standard of living is much higher than most developed countries in the world. So if that is the case, you cannot guarantee that just because a child is born into poverty, that child will somehow remain in poverty, or that mother will live through poverty, when we know that people get themselves out of poverty all the time. And what we consider to be poor in America isn't necessarily what we meant by poor 50, 60, 70, or 100 years ago. There are poor people with food in their fridge, more food in their fridge than people who work middle-class jobs due to social programs and welfare and things of that sort. Poor people have cars, poor people have cell phones, and I just think that it's bad taste to say that because somebody is poor, they cannot raise a child. My mom has 7 kids, and she did it all living in poverty. And here I stand before you, a convicted felon of 4 felonies who got out after serving 5 years in prison to have my own YouTube channel, to work a full-time job, and be a productive member of society. So I'm sorry, but pro-choice people just cannot predict the future. And I'm not willing to gamble on life just because some people might presume that that child will live in poverty. I'll lend the floor. That is the end of my opening statement.
All right, Kate, do you have anything you want to say?
Can I quickly come back to Javier for 1 sec?
Before you do that, let me just go ahead and say, let me just do my little spiel real quick. Okay. Want to let you know, folks, especially if this is your first time joining us on Modern Day Debate, that we are a neutral platform hosting debates on science, religion, and politics, and we want you to feel welcome no matter what walk of life you're from. And if you have a question for one of tonight's debaters, fire into your live chat. Be sure to tag me at Modern Day Debate. Super chats go to the top of the list. And we want you to keep it civil, attack the argument, not the person. Insults will not be read except for if they're at Josh, unless they're hate speech or violating TOS. Our invaluable moderators are working tirelessly to elevate the conversation, so please show them, the debaters, and each other the respect that they deserve by not attacking, hurling insults and attacks at each other. Our guests are linked to the description below, whether you're listening on YouTube or via the podcast. So please, if you like what you're hearing, check out their links. There will be a after show linked in the description below also. So check out that on my channel. So we will continue the conversation afterwards. And hit the subscribe button. We have plenty more debates coming your way. If you like what you're hearing, you don't want to miss those. And with that, we will kick it into the 45-minute open discussion. At your first word, gentle peeps, the floor is all yours.
First, what I would say is this guy needs to be like one of those commentators at a horse track, because he speaks really fast.
I'm from Ohio.
Secondly, I was going to say, Javier, I was going to pick up two things. Number one, I appreciate that you say that the argument about when life starts, or, is it conception, is it 6 weeks, is it the heartbeat, is it brain activity, there is no sort of consensus. And I agree with you. I'm just going to say as well, Kay and Javier, I'm not here to shout you down. I'm here to listen. I'm interested to see what you guys have got to say. So the second thing I would say about poverty argument, look, that is a real issue. I think, is it 800,000 abortions are in America every year? Am I correct in that?
Something close to that.
Yeah, something close to that. I think what I have here is in 2019, I guess this is the last time they reported to the CDC, it was roughly around 629,898 abortions in 2019 were reported. Not everybody is required to report to the CDC, so those numbers could actually be higher.
I think from my own knowledge, it was around about 800. That's what I saw.
Yeah.
And look, I'm going to say off the bat, I don't want people to go out and get abortions. I think abortion it's a very, very difficult thing to do. So when a woman has to go through an abortion, obviously the mental strain, the father may want to have the baby, et cetera, et cetera. It's a very, very difficult situation. But the poverty issue, it's a real issue. So are we actually saying that let's just say 800,000, 25% of people in America get an abortion because of socioeconomic reasons? I would be probably more respecting of the pro-life argument if we addressed those issues at the core. If we had said, rather than say we're going to ban abortion, let's address the issues why they're having abortion. So these people, for example, I'm just going to look at this 25% for now. We can't afford to have a baby. If we could address those reasons why they can't afford to have a baby, so they can afford to have a baby, can we not do that?
From my understanding, we've had social welfare programs for decades in America.
Clearly they're not working, though.
I wouldn't say they're not working. I'm actually a welfare baby, and it worked pretty fine. I think it depends on certain factors.
You were a 4-time convicted felon.
Yes, I am.
So it didn't. I'm just saying that didn't work out fine then.
Yeah,
you had a very bad outcome, at least in an earlier part of your life.
Are we going to make the argument that because people in life make bad decisions and mistakes that they therefore don't deserve to live?
No, I'm making the argument that poverty does have negative impacts on the people.
Everything has negative impacts.
No, but poverty especially. In this climate as well in America, one of the biggest reasons that people go out and shoot people, poverty.
No, that's
well, it is, and I'm pro-gun, by the way. So
okay, me as well. Kay, do you want to jump in here? I don't want to.
Well, I kind of want to address Josh's point, because we need to clarify that the pro-life movement as a whole is not restricted to the GOP or Republicans. I'm not saying that anybody said that. I just think
Brent said it in his opening statement.
No, I did not.
You said Republicans.
He did bring up Republicans, and I kind of want to echo what Brendan said. As a progressive that is also pro-life, I really, really struggle every single day, especially the news cycle since the draft leaked, with the GOP and with Republicans that are drafting these bills, that are having these discussions, because overwhelmingly you see that especially male politicians that are involved in these conversations about the legality of abortion in their states are incredibly ignorant on this issue. And we've seen it time and time again, and it's not anything new. It's been happening all the way back in the 60s before Roe v. Wade was even a thing. But to address Josh's argument more specifically is that, we have 21 million registered pro-life Democrats right now. There are people that are pro-life and are actively advocating for what you're saying. We do want to strengthen our social programs. We do want to help women we want to address these underlying issues so that women don't feel the need to have abortions in the first place. I mean, if you look at the statistics as to why women are having abortions, these are situations, these are issues that we could very, very easily combat, and then women no longer feel the need to have those abortions in the first place.
Right.
And then we're addressing more like a 30% statistic of the abortion rate instead of a 100% statistic of the abortion rate under this one broad umbrella, which with Brenton's argument is the broad umbrella of what about women who need these abortions to save their life? What about the women that are having high risk pregnancies? And as a woman that has gone through 2 high risk pregnancies, I understand that and I empathize so much with that. And I think that it is an important conversation that we need to be having, especially now going forward with the likelihood that Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned and that power is going to go back into the hands of these overwhelmingly ignorant politicians. It's incredibly important that we keep these conversations going so that these politicians that are legislating this understand our position. And the position is that women that are having high risk pregnancies need to be given access to whatever care that they need in order to not die. And this has always been the official position of the pro-life movement, and we do need to do a better job advocating for it and continuing to advocate for it as we go forward in these legal conversations in individual states.
So, Kay, if I could come back on that. So what about the issue of poverty? What would be your response and your solution to that?
Well, there's no one solution to poverty because a lot of things a lot of things cause poverty, but I think
give me a couple.
I think that number one, we need to strengthen our welfare system. Right now it is incredibly broken. It doesn't function the way that it was meant to function. People that need to be on it can't get on it because there are people on it that shouldn't be on it. And as somebody that has been on welfare in the past, I was raising 2 kids in the very, very early years on welfare. It is incredibly frustrating dealing with the welfare system because it is incredibly broken, and we need to be dedicating more time and effort and energy into making sure that that functions the right way, so that specifically women, this is who the system was designed for. People that are in these impoverished situations that need help, that need assistance to feed their families can do so. That is just, one stepping stone. Having a better welfare system, it would be a huge help. Having access to low cost or even free childcare is make or break for a lot of parents, single and homes that have 2-parent households. Whenever you're living in poverty, majority of the time you're going to have a 2-parent or a single parent household where all of the adults in the household work. These parents need to have access to quality, low cost, or even free childcare. And that's just 2 things that we could do.
If I could just quickly interject once more. Sorry, guys, I'm kind of like taking over the show here, so just mute me if I'm going on too much. I agree with you. Josh. I agree with you, Kay. I think those are the solid points that you made. But should we not sort those things out first? For Roe v. Wade is repealed.
They've been trying to sort this thing out for a long time.
Well, if you vote for me in 2024, I'll sort everything. Yeah. I'll punch Mitch McConnell in the head. Do anything I want.
I mean, what he's saying is not that they need to sort out the abortion issue. That we need to solve the problem of poverty.
Good luck.
If we simply make it prohibited, what's going to happen is they're still going to have the abortions. It will just be more unsafe.
Rich people get abortions as well. It's not just exclusive to poverty. Sure, now, can I finish? Can I finish now? I know me and Kay are on the same team, but I kind of disagree a little bit here, right? I think that what people don't necessarily talk about is strengthening our communities and strengthening our families. There are a couple things that you can do to actually increase your chances of not living in poverty, like graduating high school, waiting till you're married to have kids. There are certain things that statistics have and data and studies have shown works to lift people up out of poverty. But what we never talk about is family structures. We never talk about empowering the communities and the families to stay together and incentives for families to stay together. Most of these social welfare programs actually don't kick in if you are in a stable family environment. If you have a mom and a dad who both have an income, you don't get government assistance. And what that does is
that's because the income exceeds the benchmark for it. It doesn't have anything to do with it having a mom and a dad. It has to do with having 2 adults that are working and they make too much money to still be on welfare.
Yeah, but I'm not saying that this is the majority of cases, but I'm very familiar with families who game the system by a man and a woman not staying together because that woman wants to keep her welfare benefits. And I've seen it many times.
That's horrifying and tragic. Like, the thing is what we should do is make sure they have the benefits much more easily, as opposed to, you know, take them away and then also forbid a necessary medical procedure.
Okay, well, what's the plan to eventually get these people off of the welfare program? Because I hear a lot of talk about expanding the welfare program, but we have lifetime welfare recipients who live their whole lifestyle on welfare, and their kids grow up and live on welfare. But nobody ever focuses on how do we get them to eventually get off of the welfare program. And there has to be some kind of structure and limitations put there to incentivize them to get off of that program.
Well, hang on. So first off, why do we need to incentivize them to get off welfare?
Because it's good for a person to rise up through the through out of poverty. Don't you want people out of poverty?
Hang on. That's your opinion that it's good for somebody to rise up and work. But the fact of the matter is that if we don't necessarily need the work done that they need to that they would otherwise do, you know, if we don't need another fry cook or whatever, because usually when they come out of welfare, they're taking very low end jobs that don't pay well at all. You know, I don't see the point of making people work if they don't want to work and we don't need the work done. It doesn't make sense to me.
I don't know how to respond to that. I just
kind of actually see your point there, Javier. Actually, I'm gonna throw you a bone, as we say in the United Kingdom. Yeah, look, there should be a path that we want to get these people into work, and we want them producing things for the workforce. For example, in America, I just come back from America, actually, in Seattle.
Sorry.
This country is a tire fire.
Listen, have you ever been to Gillingham and fucking Kent? It's shit. Okay, so I'll take Seattle all day long. But you know, like for example, the infrastructure is crumbling all over America. There's a perfectly good workforce there that we could get people building bridges, upgrading the roads, etc., etc. And you know, so of course, you were making the point there, Brent, about sort of like jobs that are not really necessary, but there's loads of jobs out there that are necessary.
Yeah, and I would agree 100% if there was some sort of public works program.
I'm here with Javier on this. If we were to train these people so they could rebuild the bridges, or you know, rebuild the infrastructure, or build new infrastructure, that would be a good thing.
But they can't. Yeah, they can't, because in a lot of people's minds, these people just they can't help themselves. For the life of me,
I don't believe in that.
I'm not saying that people inherently say that, but a lot of times the rhetoric insinuates it. That, well, just like he said, well, do jobs that they might not want to do or that we don't need them to do, right? And I mean, are we arguing that a more skilled population isn't better for the country? I mean,
a more skilled population is absolutely better for the country. Yeah, the issue is that wages are set by supply and demand. So, for instance, we're essentially running on like a hamster wheel here. If, say if everybody who works at McDonald's went and learned coding, because the Democrats have been very big on learn coding. They stole the Papa John slogan.
I know, they've spawned like 1 million fucking Java engineers, and I work as an infrastructure engineer. Fuck Java.
Yeah, so like if they all learn coding, then coders will get paid what people who work at McDonald's get paid, because wages don't have anything at all to do with how much money you make for the company. They don't have anything to do with how vital the work is. It's simply how many people can we get to do the job at the lowest possible level. So I think that like any kind of solution, you know, assuming that we want to train people and get them working on, you know, public works projects, repairing our infrastructure, I think that's wonderful. And it would be a great way for them to bring money into their communities, and they may not get as many abortions at that point. But I think that like, we need to specifically address poverty, and we need to address it in a way that makes sense and is smart, as opposed to these quick slipshod suggestions.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question, Brent. Mm-hmm. Is it justifiable for a mother who's living in dirt poverty, and she has a 2-year-old, and she can't afford to take care of that 2-year-old? Then is it justified to then kill the 2-year-old?
No,
so that she can rise up out of poverty? So when we talk about abortion, you could agree that we do not know when life begins. You could. Would you?
I mean,
Well, I think I'm the only one that heartily disagrees on this point.
Okay,
No,
so I just
I'm-
have to say something to Kaz quickly. Can you just put Javier over to our side?
Yeah.
Because
I should clarify, because you said in your opening statement, and I didn't respond because I couldn't right there, that I had said that that life begins at 26 weeks or 28 weeks or whatever. That's not what I said. I said personhood begins at 26 weeks and 20 because
based
the fetus has of the development of the thalamus. Once the fetus has the thalamus in place, and once the body essentially has had time to acclimate to it, that's when consciousness starts. That's when it can feel pain. That's when it begins to move towards the ability to make memories.
That's not actually true. That's not actually true. And studies actually show it's much later than that, when we can detect when humans start to develop consciousness and develop and have memories and things of that sort. And it's actually around 5 years old. Hang
on, there's still consciousness before 5 years.
But we don't fully understand consciousness. You would agree with that, right? Scientists have not figured out consciousness yet.
We do understand that without the thalamus, you cannot feel pain, you cannot have experiences, you cannot make memories, you are not conscious in any way. You're closer to, as I said, like a tree. Or
so if a person in a coma cannot have experience and cannot feel pain or anything of that sort, you are saying it's justifiable to just kill them.
I mean, it wouldn't be justifiable to just kill them. I would be in favor of if their families believe that they would not want to live this way and therefore want to pull the plug. That's totally fine. But I don't think someone outside of the family has a right to make that decision. I would not, for instance, empower the state to run around and start pulling plugs, because that would be horrifying. I think that when it comes to someone who either is very old or gets into a accident that removes their ability to be conscious, and you're at essentially brain death, but their body's being kept alive by machines, I would want to die if I was in that position.
But there are people who wake out of comas. Like a I said, there's this inherent belief that we can somehow determine the future of a life form, or like exactly when this person is valuable versus when they're not. We don't understand consciousness. We don't know exactly how it works and what makes consciousness conscious. And we're taking a lot of shots in the dark here when we say a child at 16 weeks or a fetus at 16 weeks or whatever may not necessarily be conscious.
Well,
taking a lot of socks. Did you?
Yeah,
shots in the dark. Shots in the dark.
I get what you're saying, that it is an unknown, but it is not an unknown that the child they physically cannot be conscious without the thalamus. And the thalamus, again, it develops at 26 weeks, and it takes at least another 2 to begin to develop. If people want to see this, I have a study that I brought up specifically on this, because I want to make sure that this was the case. At any point, life is a process. So at any point in that process, we can say life begins here, or life begins here, or whatever. In just the same way you could say, well, the baby started when the grandparents met each other, because it's one long continuous process. Yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous.
But you can't really. You can't really though, because the baby doesn't have its own genetic code at that point. The baby doesn't have.
Wait. What does the genetic code have to do with it?
That makes it a distinct human. Once you develop your own genetic code, you are a distinct human. You have your own DNA sequence.
I would say that you are perhaps a distinct organism. But again,
Brent, just quickly, I just love the fact that we were talking about producing more coders in America. And then we're like, the genetic code, you could see 3 people in the background there going, if this happens, that happens.
Yeah. You could say it's a distinct organism, and we could agree with you on that, but that wouldn't necessarily convey political personhood, because that's really what we're talking about.
But that's not what the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence speaks of. It says life. It doesn't say consciousness. It doesn't say when the thalamus develops. It says life.
So let me ask you something.
It also doesn't say when life starts.
Yeah.
Yes, and we can agree. So why not err on the side of caution?
Because
so
erring on the side of caution is arbitrary. You could err on the side of caution in any situation.
If I could just interject
Go ahead,
really
Kay.
quickly, guys.
crack on.
Just for clarification, if you open up any embryology textbook, I actually have a couple. I wish I had gotten them off of my shelf beforehand. There is a 96% consensus among embryologists that life begins at the moment of fertilization. At the moment of fertilization, a brand new living organism comes into existence, and depending on the species of the two creatures that created it, that is what describes what kind of organization it is. So,
Okay. Yeah. So first off, Kay, I'm sorry to interrupt you there. They are talking about life beginning at conception in the sense that this particular process that they have subjectively decided to look at begins there. But that you could just as subjectively decide to look at any other point in the process. It seems intuitive that life begins there. I will definitely, and I will even say life begins at conception, because in that sense, yes, life in the sense that you mean it does begin at that point, when the sperm meets the egg.
And you would agree it's a human life as well, right?
Yes, but it is not a person. And that's very, very important.
But there's nothing in the law that distinguishes between person and life. It says life.
Yeah,
life.
But, whoa, hang on. The Constitution, like the Declaration of Independence, says life, liberty, and happiness. That's not a law. That's just like a vision statement.
But it does say that is the government's fundamental role, and that's why we developed the government. So it speaks towards.
We didn't develop.
I think you developed the government because my country came marauding in and tried to tax you. Actually, so.
Yeah. Well, no, we were you.
Dumped your tea in the harbor, and
yeah.
I've the middle finger ever since.
Yeah,
I've never fucking forgiven you for that.
Yeah, the state has this mythology about itself that people built it willingly, and that it serves this important function for all of us. This is not true. The state is essentially, in every country, especially countries in Europe, I know Hilditch will agree with me, it's whatever group of bandits happen to be the best at being bandits. And gradually they got built up to nobility and kings, and now here we are with Vladimir Putin.
But that's a reduction of the argument. The argument isn't that, we built the government like from scratch for these reasons. What I'm saying is these were the arguments laid out towards the British government monarchy from our founders on why we were breaking away from the British Empire.
Why should I even care about that? Like traitors. Like for instance, they took out the thing that Thomas Jefferson wanted, and he had a whole section denouncing slave trade as cruel and inhumane. So, like, why should we specifically say that because the Declaration of Independence,
if I wake up tomorrow,
life, that we make this other law?
I'm pretty sure you like living in a country where murder is illegal.
Wait.
Which country is murder illegal? Sorry.
No. What I'm saying is protecting life. You would have a problem if your government didn't respond if I went and murdered my neighbor. You would have a problem with that if the government.
Which country is murder legal?
No, what I'm saying is you would have an argument to say, what use of a government? Why do we have a government if they can't even stop people from murdering other people? You agree that's a fundamental aspect of having a government.
My opening statement, because they can't protect us from mass shooters. They can't protect us from terrorists. When we empower the military to go abroad, they more often wind up blowing up civilians and empowering Blackwater to go on massacres. So why would I?
But would you want to live in a country where the government didn't have a vested interest in protecting life?
I mean, I would like to live in a country where there is no government whatsoever and no military and no police.
Me too.
I am completely against laws. Like that's what an anarchist is.
You say that, Javier, but I would probably say that the country in which I live in does all those things in which you said. Yeah. Right. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to live in a country where I know if somebody murders their neighbor, there are going to be consequences. You can't just go around.
Someone's just moved out next door, mate. You can move in. You can move in.
Again, a buddy of mine in high school was killed and buried in a field somewhere. We never found him. Whoever did it got away with it. So.
Yeah, there's a misconception here. Yeah, of course we care about life. Of course we care about life. Right? We just have a disagreement when life actually begins. And you said it in your opening statement as well. I think personally, you also don't know when life begins. Clearly, Kay has said conception is when life begins, but I have a feeling that you're not too sure.
I made the statement. I know that Princeton University Their research claims that life begins
but
at
I'm
fertilization.
asking you.
But
I'm not asking Princeton University. I'm asking you.
Because there is disagreement amongst scientists and people who study this, I'm willing to err on the side that I can't say for certain, with 100% certainty, that life begins at fertilization.
Yeah,
but what I will say is I err on the side of caution.
Yeah, here's the
Okay,
problem.
so here's my one sec, Brent. Here's my question again. When do you think life begins?
I reserve judgment. I don't have the information to make.
Are you pleading the fifth on me?
I mean, I'm being honest. I mean, honest. I can't. I don't deal in beliefs. There are things I know, things I don't know, and the rest is up for until we figure it out. And I'm just honest about it.
I'm gonna take you to court. It'd be the next like Amber Heard fucking Johnny Depp trial. Yeah, you and me like standing up there.
Yeah, get him to answer the question. Okay, so we could say that it is erring on the side of caution to agree that the fetus begins at conception, and therefore it should be granted full legal personhood.
There's more evidence for that than we don't.
I mean, no, there's not any evidence for that because science cannot say. They can only tell us what a thing is. It cannot tell us about that thing.
But they can tell you if it's a life form or not, right?
I mean, yes, but again, there's a lot of well, not always also with viruses and stuff, but there's a lot of different life forms that are not granted personhood. Animals are not granted personhood. Trees are not granted personhood. I don't go to jail if I go cut down a tree. So, this is a political question. And what you are saying, in essence, is that you are so certain that you're erring on this side of caution that you are willing to empower a police officer, the same kind of people that, choked out Michael Brown, or no, I'm sorry, shot Michael Brown. These exact same people to come in there and force a woman who does not want to be pregnant to remain pregnant.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I wouldn't make the argument that police officers should force women to have a baby. What I'm saying is, I think there should be laws saying that doctors can't perform abortions. That's a totally different argument. Now,
okay.
So what you're saying is, when doctors break the law, who comes knocking on their door? The police.
Yeah. So it's the same thing. You want to punish doctors who do it with.
If you're going to talk about legislation, of course the police are involved.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Should we not regulate doctors at all?
We regulate doctors all the time. There are procedures and surgeries and all kind of stuff that the government says that doctors can't perform, and medicines that they can't prescribe you. Let's not act like the government doesn't have an interest in the medical profession at all and what you can do with your body. Now, the second thing I would also say is, just because you might make the argument, well, if a woman can't get an abortion, she might find other means of doing so, and it might put her life at risk or whatever. Okay, but do I care about somebody going across the street to murder somebody if they get murdered in the process? If you're murdering that life inside of you, why should I care about the murderer?
So first off, I don't think you believe that this is actually murder. And in fact, I would say that most people, 99% of the pro-life movement, does not believe that it's murder. They think they do, but they don't. And the reason why is we're sitting here right now having an argument like on modern day debate about the ethics of this. If the government was killing, there's been more abortions in this country than 8 Holocausts. So if you say like, oh, I need to pass this little law to deal with literal Octo-Hitler, you don't believe that it's murder. You don't like it, but you don't believe that it's murder. Now, there are some people who
define
believe
murder
it's
for
murder,
me. Define murder for me. Define murder for me.
Illegal killing of a human.
Is that a human life inside of a woman?
Yes, but again, it is not granted personhood.
Look,
I can't do no better than that. I can't do no better than that.
I'll throw you a bone. Okay,
yeah.
So all right, so because I actually quite like you. You seem like a really, really
I like
nice
y'all
guy.
too.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. You've got a point there, and I'll tell you why. So in the UK, even if someone is 1 week pregnant, if you were to kill that person on the street, you would be charged with double homicide.
In America as well.
Oh, okay. Oh, fuck me. Here we go.
I for the life of me, look.
I'm not independence from us.
I don't look. I know a lot of people say, well, men are trying to control women. I don't necessarily get into all that. Brent, when you opened a statement, you said that you wanted to get away from emotions and deal with the facts. Yeah. You wanted to deal with evidence and things of that sort, right? I'm following the evidence. I'm following the facts. And for the life of me, I just can't see how we justify pro-choice. I'm trying my hardest, but I just can't see how you're justifying this based on the conversation that we're having.
Well, I can justify it. I can justify it quite easily. So, like, I was actually waiting to bring this point up, but the majority of Europe has decided, if you look at Germany, France, Italy, 12 weeks is the cutoff point. After 12 weeks, you can't get an abortion. That seems to be some sort of common trend. It differs in a few other countries. For example, in the United Kingdom, Netherlands, and Sweden, it's 24 weeks. Not 12, sorry. I almost said 14. I don't know why. But the majority of Europe said, right, 12 weeks. After that, we consider it a human being. Would you think, both of you, Kay and Javier, how the fuck do I say your name?
Javier.
Okay, you're right.
At least you said it twice.
Do you think that's a fair cutoff point?
Like Kay was saying, she believes that fertilization is the beginning of life. So I doubt that she would accept that.
But what about you?
Me personally, I'm not willing to grant that. And
well, don't tell the Germans.
for example, like Brenton said earlier about personhood. He uses the word personhood. Yeah. But like we have known instances of people dehumanizing other people and considering them less than people. Sure, to justify horrific acts.
Yeah, it's called pseudo-speciation. It's why you don't want to be dropping racial slurs left and right. Soldiers do it to make it easier to kill the enemy. So yeah, I know what you're talking about here. The thing is that, again, I believe that a fetus is life. It is alive. I believe that it is human life. I do not believe that it is a political person. We have a very specific definition for this. And the reason why I do that is not because I have some kind of bizarre hatred of fetuses.
I got you.
The reason I do that is that what you're doing is you are weighing the right to autonomy and honestly the right to life of the woman against the fetus.
No, I'm not. And she did that when she had sex. She did that.
Whoa. Hang on.
But it takes two to tango.
And he did that as well. She and he did that as well. Yeah. I'm not letting men off the hook here.
So what is this? You're going to saddle some people with a revenge baby?
No, it's not revenge. It's life. It's natural. It's what happens when two people get together. It's not revenge.
Hang on. So again, what I'm talking about here, her actually having engaged in sex doesn't change the fact that what you're doing again is you're taking two individuals and you are placing them against each other, and only one we can rule with, like legally. It's not possible to balance them exactly equally. If we take no action, we take the fetus's side. If we take action, we take the mother's side. If we decide to revoke the right to do it,
both of them get to live. Both of them get to live.
Well, one, we don't know that. But also two,
like those cases are very rare. They're not the majority of cases of abortion. If we want to discuss that, we can.
No,
but
I'm not talking about that. I'm saying,
okay.
So first off, 60, and you talked about this at the beginning, 60% of abortions are done by women who have already had kids, usually more than one kid. And the reason they are getting the abortion is they cannot afford yet another one, especially if they're a single mom. Because you can't give enough care to
this goes back to what I was saying about poverty. But also, I just want to quickly say one thing. So we're talking about pregnancy and abortion and everything, and we've got 11 minutes left, 12 minutes left, and there are three blokes on this call. Kay. And there's poor old Kay, the only person that can get fucking pregnant, is sat there and hasn't had a word. So why didn't you have a word, Kay?
I apologize, Kay.
No, I've kind of taken a step back from this part of the conversation because as a pro-life activist, I actively choose to avoid having the philosophical conversation of personhood. Just not something that I ever engage in. I do that intentionally because my stance is killing human beings equals bad. And I am very much like that across the spectrum. I don't think that we should be killing human beings for any reason in any situation.
Yeah. You understand that's a philosophical position.
One sec, Brent. It's interesting you bring that up, Kay, because the only time I ever hear about an argument of personhood is in the United States of America. We don't have these arguments in Europe. Like, what is personhood? It's basically we argue, and we're quite shit at arguing, but we try anyway. When does life begin? And there's not a consensus in the scientific community. There's some people will say heartbeat, brainwave, Some people say 24 weeks. It's constantly evolving. But, I agree with you on that.
And
Where
I
do you
like that.
put-
I like
Sorry.
that you brought up that over by where you're from, there is a kind of consensus of, okay, 12 weeks is the cutoff point. We have that
Well,
here
in
too.
most of Europe, yeah, but
Yeah,
not
most
not
of
where I'm
Europe
from.
is like 12 weeks, no more past that, and
Correct.
we are of that consensus here in the United States too. Statistics show that a majority of people do support limiting abortion to the first trimester. And I like that. I found it interesting that you brought that up, because in Brenton's opening statement, he brought up the fact that majority of our population also supports Roe versus Wade. These two statistics are actually directly conflicting with each other, because Roe versus Wade actually makes it impossible for states to do this. And so what we're facing here in the United States is a huge ignorance and misinformation problem.
A lot of people don't know what
and-
don't know what Roe v. Wade actually is.
It's very true.
Yeah, and it's sad. And I think
the government exploits this specifically for votes and for power and clout.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with it. That we have this huge misinformation problem that has actually started all the way back in the 80s, whenever the Republican Party realized that they could capitalize votes whenever they ran on a pro-life platform. And it has become a increasingly hot button issue ever since then. And so we have this political divide that is driving misinformation and ignorance on both sides, both the pro-life and the pro-choice side, from politicians and members of the media that are just trying to use this as, a polarization tactic to divide people. And then you have people like me, who is I'm pro-life. I'm also a leftist. I'm very, very progressive in all of my other views, except for that of abortion. That keeps me on more towards the right side of the political spectrum here in the United States. So whenever having discussions with people like Josh that don't live in the United States, it makes this conversation, it kind of moves the goalposts a little bit, because what we argue here in the US is different than how we argue abortion on a worldwide scale. And the issues that we face a lot of the time whenever arguing abortion here in the United States is the significant amount of misinformation that we have to work our way through before we can even have a conversation about it.
I totally agree with you. A lot of the stuff I see that, like, for example, I had the misfortune of turning on the television when I was in Seattle, and Fox News.
Oh, you poor bastard.
Yeah, and Fox News was like, they're fucking ripping babies' limbs apart, as if it was like some sort of like Balrog from Lord of the Rings that just walked into a hospital and he just stuffs his arm up some fucking poor woman's vagina and just rips this baby to pieces. Like, that clearly doesn't fucking happen, right? Like, so we have to be serious about this. And I think I agree with you, Kay. We have to tell the truth. The truth of the matter is, a lot of people will bring up things like late-term abortions. Statistically, they really don't happen. They really don't.
They don't.
So that's not what the argument's about. The argument is clearly about, is it a life at conception? So let's just stick to the facts. But also, I would say,
Josh, just to clear thing
Sure.
up. The argument isn't, is it alive at conception? The argument is it a form of human life that we feel comfortable empowering the state to punish the woman who is currently hosting it, and put her in jail and or kill her, or
I agree
do
with
that to
Brent.
doctors.
Well,
I guess I'm coming from the European perspective here, which is we've always tried to argue, when does life begin? So when is something real? When is it human? That's what we've always argued in Europe. And, obviously we have many different countries in Europe. We won't talk about France. Fuck France. I had to get my jab in at France. Sorry. But like, typically it's like, when does life begin? Like, is it 12 weeks? Is it 6 weeks? Malta says it's at conception, but they're extremely Catholic, so you could understand that. Poland, as you quite rightly pointed out before, Kay, says conception as well. The United Kingdom says 20 weeks. France says 12. There's differing opinions all over the place, but I think that is really where the argument is. It's not about ripping limbs apart. It's, when can we consider this thing that's growing in the womb to be a human being? And when that is a human being, when is it due the rights that it's due by law? So I think that's where the argument revolves. And I often find it fascinating that, we solved this argument many decades ago in Europe. Well, except for the Maltese, they're still fucking arguing about it because they're wankers. But we solved this argument. So there is no sort of like protest for pro-life, pro-abortion or anything going on in, say, London or Berlin or Paris. It seems to be in America. You can't crack where
that's what we do. We argue.
the middle line is.
That's what we do. We argue.
Yeah, it's definitely not unique to the abortion issue. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I know that for sure too.
I would like to say this. A lot of times people on the left side of the fence will say they're all about democracy and they want to preserve democracy, and they'll say that the Republicans or conservatives are trying to stifle democracy or whatever the case may be, right? I don't consider myself a Republican. I am a conservative, and I don't think all conservatives think the same, and I don't think all conservatives are a part of the Republican Party. I'm an independent myself, right? So what I would say is, if you're for democracy, all Roe v. Wade does is kick back the abortion issue to the states, and it allows people in their own states to decide for themselves in what state they want to live in and how they want to decide on that issue. But you don't want democracy in that situation. You want the Supreme Court, which is not a constitutional law or passed by Congress, to decide on abortion. You want the Supreme Court to decide for the whole country on what we should accept and shouldn't accept, even though we can all agree that this is still not settled. And we still are having a massive debate about when life begins and things of that sort.
Yeah, but you would probably agree, for example, I've got a hit back on that. So are you pro-gun? Because I'm pro-gun.
Yeah, I'm pro-gun.
Right, so let's just say, I don't know, let me just pick a state at random. I'm just having a look at the US map. All right, Utah, fuck it, we'll go with that one. Let's say Utah just decided to ban guns, and the Supreme Court steps in and upholds the Second Amendment. Yeah. That would be a good thing, right?
Yeah, that's a constitutional right.
Of course.
Right. But abortion isn't a constitutional right.
No, hang on. It was a decision made by the Supreme Court back in 70.
It wasn't necessarily.
Yeah.
So Javi, let me ask you something. We'll go back to that Utah. So, because what if, for instance, Utah decided to ban guns, and then Utah passed a law that says we will put anyone in jail who goes to another state to buy a gun? Like, and there are a lot of those bills right now being written and trying to be passed.
You can't, but that surpasses the law of the land, which is the Constitution. You can't write a law in a state that imposes on a federal constitutional law. Yeah, but so you couldn't be able to do that from the very beginning.
You were insinuating that you didn't like federal law.
You're in violation of a fundamental right.
It hasn't happened yet, but currently, if we're talking about because of the method that we have created for interpreting the Constitution, as we are speaking right now, the Constitution does say that it is that abortion is legal, like that it cannot be abridged by.
Where does it say that in the Constitution?
Well, the reason they made the decision based upon the right to privacy, I believe that's the 14th Amendment. Essentially the idea behind it was that like. It's the same reason why, for instance, like soldiers cannot go in and check up on what you're doing to make sure you're not a criminal without due process of law.
Okay.
So similarly, the state cannot go in without due process of law and make sure that a woman who is pregnant remains pregnant.
Yeah, but the state can determine whether a doctor can perform an abortion. That's not a right to privacy. For example, the state already does this. We already agreed that the state decides what doctors can and can't do all the time. This is when Roe v. Wade was decided. It was decided on faulty logic. And even if you're pro-life,
again, I don't think the logic is faulty, because if they overturn Roe v. Wade, we're going to be dealing with like a Big Brother situation almost immediately. Because essentially, the argument against Roe v. Wade, advanced by I believe it was Alito, like that specifically says that the right to privacy does not exist because the Constitution doesn't say right to privacy.
Let me ask you a question.
If we have this, we're going to lose the right to privacy.
Let me ask you a question. When the government banning certain medical procedures that doctors can perform, is that a violation of privacy?
I mean, it would be in the case of Roe v. Wade. But
I'm talking
again,
about any medical procedure that the government is directly getting involved between a patient and her doctor or his doctor saying you can't get a certain medical procedure. Would you agree that that's a violation of privacy? Because abortion,
I mean, again,
it's considered
I'm
a
not
medical procedure.
Again,
there's a point there.
this is
There's
like
a
in the
point
weeds.
there. You know, like if a doctor decides to like, I don't know if euthanasia is legal in
It's,
America. I don't think
it's
it is.
faulty logic. It's faulty logic. You wouldn't say that with
I
any
see-
other medical
I see
procedure.
Kay there, like
It's
going,
not-
yeah, I've seen one or two
yeah.
people, but you know, like.
But Brenton, you wouldn't say that with any other medical procedure. You would not say, well, they didn't let the doctor do this surgery, so therefore that's a violation of privacy. You wouldn't say that.
Okay, so first off, I might say that it depends on the specific procedure.
Why does it depend on the procedure? Should it matter? That's privacy
Because you
between a
don't wanna
patient and a
approach-
doctor.
You don't want to approach regulations with a blunt instrument, and that's what happens when you try.
Okay, so
I
the
think
government
that-
has the right to invade between a doctor and a patient.
No,
I
it
would
doesn't,
argue
not
that
in this
probably
context.
the line is like if you look at procedures that are currently illegal in the United States, the line. I mean, at least I'm not a big believer that the government gives two shits about preserving the life of American
don't.
citizens, but
You went to the fucking war in Iraq, like.
yeah, like they go through the motions of saying this procedure is banned because it's killing human beings. It's killing people. People are dying in this procedure. It's not safe. Therefore, it's not legal for you to perform these procedures in the United States. Now, this kind of goes back to your argument because you argue the point of personhood, but for the majority of pro-life people, we are of the position life begins at fertilization. That is a human being. Killing human beings is wrong. Therefore, a procedure that directly and intentionally ends the life of a human being should be banned in the United States, and that doctors should not be
Sure.
protected
And
under
I
the
s-
right for privacy.
Yeah,
Okay, so
I
Kay,
see
can
that
I
line
ask
of
you one
logic.
thing? Sorry, for 1 sec, Brent.
Well,
Kay, can I ask
guys,
you one
we're
thing?
at the end of our open discussion section, so we do need to move on to our closing statements. If you guys want to keep doing that, or we can keep doing that and forego the closing
Who gives a
statement.
fuck about closing statements? Let's keep going. This is good.
How much time we got if we forego the closing statements?
20 minutes.
Yeah, let's keep it going.
Let's keep going. Yeah.
So you're right.
sounds
I just
fun.
want
We'll
to
just
ask
cover that.
Kay because Kay seemed the.
He's been very polite this whole time.
Do you know what? Actually,
the 20 minutes back on the clock.
before I ask my question, like I am gonna just say to Kay and Javier, this has been a really, really good debate, and I'm glad that we aren't just trying to murder each other from this
15 minutes,
through the
sorry.
screen.
Yeah,
Okay, calm down, Kaz.
I'm pro-life. I'm pro-life.
But so is there any situation whatsoever that you would allow abortion? So let's say for the case of rape or incest, would you allow an abortion for that? No, there's a reason I asked. Yeah, I'm getting to it. Calm your kid.
I'll be straightforward. I am what they can call an ethical life activist. So I am no exceptions anti-abortion activist. I am of the position that just because a human being is conceived in a horrible and awful way, rape is a terrible violation of someone's body, and I'm not okay with that, obviously. I'm a survivor of sexual assault myself, but because that human being was created out of an act of violence does not justify an act of violence against that human being that had nothing to do with the original act of violence.
Okay,
but
so
does
number one, I appreciate your honesty and I appreciate your consistency, because a lot of people, that claim to be pro-life, that's where they would sort of go off the whip, like, oh yeah, abortion's okay then. Where they always say that life is precious and it begins at conception, except this, where you seem to be fair enough. I disagree with you, but I appreciate your consistency. So I think consistency is key here. What about you, Javier? Am I gonna drill into your mind and catch you out?
One exception: if the mother's life is in danger, and that's my exception. Other than that, even rape and incest, I don't believe that the child is guilty for the sins of the parent. And the moment you start to make life dependent on the circumstances of other people, then you can apply that across the board in many different situations, and we don't want to live in that world.
Okay. Again, like I said, I appreciate your consistency on the matter. Of course, I disagree with you, but I appreciate your
consistency. It's actually not consistent, though.
How
Is
so?
it not?
Yeah.
Well,
So
actually,
you said you believe in an exception for the life of the mother, which is great. I agree. If we are going to ban this, we should probably have that exception. The problem is that all of the problems that exist with rape and incest exist with the life of the mother. So that baby is still a person as you see it. And so if the mother is capable of delivering it, you would necessarily have to say, well, we have to force this woman to die.
If the mother,
that's really that's really what we're talking about again here. If the woman doesn't want to have the baby, and the woman does not want to die, and we have a good idea that the woman it will die if she has this baby,
that changes things.
This is essentially forcing a woman to die at gunpoint. And now I'm not saying that thing is common, but the fact that the logic that you've employed here
I'm confused.
Directly contradicts that.
I'm confused. Explain that to me again, because I'm I'm hearing you wrong. Say it again for me.
Okay. If the baby, like imagine the baby is able to be delivered. So the baby will live, but the mother will die. Okay. So if you go with saying that it's okay to have abortions if the mother will die, you are then necessarily, you have to agree that you are murdering that baby. And that means
of course.
Yeah. So why are you saying that why are you okay with murdering the baby if the woman doesn't want to die? And and if you change your position on that, are you then okay with forcing someone to do something they know is going to kill them that they don't want to do at gunpoint?
We cannot equate a healthy woman giving birth to a healthy child as the same as a woman going to die if she gives birth to that child.
But again, it doesn't affect the child. So like Kay said, in the case of like rape and incest, it's not the child's fault. Similarly, it's not the child's fault that the mother is going to die.
It's not the Jews' fault that Hitler wants to kill him, but we got to kill Hitler to stop him from killing the Jews, right? So it changes.
Really
someone on the right.
Right. What I'm saying is, when you have to make a decision between two lives, you have to make a value decision, right? You can let Hitler live, but he's going to kill Jews. And there are going to be Jews that die in the cause of you not murdering this man. Right. So you have to make a value judgment.
Okay, here's a question for you. Would you abort Adolf Hitler?
Would I? I mean,
yeah. Would you abort Hitler?
Yeah, would you abort Adolf Hitler?
No, I wouldn't, unless I had 100% certainty that Hitler would turn out the way he is. And I'm not into predicting the future.
Okay, so he bombed out chip shops, and like one of the best chip shops in all of England got fucked up. Of course I would fucking abort him. I want that chip shop back.
But here's the question, though. If Hitler was put in a different family, in a different circumstance, you don't know if Hitler would have turned out to be the Hitler we know. So cannot make a...
Hang on, Hitler couldn't be put in a different family to a different circumstance. Like that's not possible.
Well, he said if I would abort Hitler, that means I'm in control and I have some control over the circumstances of Hitler's upbringing or whatever, because I'm there.
So I meant it as a joke, and now it's turned into a massive conversation.
But what I'm saying is, when you have to choose between Hitler's life and the lives of Jews, you have to make a value judgment. That's the same thing with the mother and the baby. You both can't live. One has to live, one has to die. Then we have to place a value judgment on that. It's not the same thing if both can live.
Oh, hang on. You're describing this dispassionately. It's not simply that one can live and one can die. It's that you, through the state, are forcing the woman to die against her will. Now you're doing that to save the baby the way you see it.
You're shifting the goalpost here. We're talking about you.
Can I interject here for a minute, gentlemen? Because like we've only got 9 minutes left. This hypothetical that you guys are arguing over is actually kind of pointless, because in the case where the baby will live with 100% certainty, then you're talking about post-viability, and in cases of post-viability, what we refer to as late-term abortions, delivery is statistically safer. Late-term abortions take place over a 2 to 4 day time period. It is a long process. It is very, very taxing on the woman's body, and it can be incredibly dangerous. So whenever discussing this specific scenario, if the baby can absolutely live, there's not a scenario where we have to say, well, you have to pick between the two right now.
Yeah,
but that depends on medical technology.
There actually is a scenario where you have that problem, and that's where, for instance, like we've got an ectopic pregnancy. There's a number of times that either the baby is going to come out dead, essentially, like with a malformed head or something, or that the baby will kill the mother. Like if you have an ectopic, not an ectopic pregnancy.
Ectopic.
Thank you.
or tubal pregnancy.
Tubal pregnancy, yeah.
That
I
is
mean,
something that
can...
is discussed a lot, especially right now, because there are a lot of people that are like, if they ban abortion, how are we going to take care of our ectopic pregnancies? And I think that it is incredibly important to put on record that ectopic pregnancy removal is not an abortion. And not a single pro-life law.
I mean, it literally is an abortion. Like, it is called an abortion by the doctors that perform it.
It is called, like, they call it an abortion,
but that's not how people
not,
use it in the colloquial.
And it's not how it is. It's not how it's charted in medical.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like she had an abortion. Like, no, she had. It's a very, very specific word for the surgery to remove an ectopic pregnancy.
Yeah.
And under pro-life legislation, and this is why people have had to go back in and rewrite legislation before it's passed into law to put this specifically word for word in anti-abortion legislation, even though it's not necessary to do so, that if you are performing to remove an ectopic pregnancy, it is perfectly legal under this new anti-abortion law. I just wanted to specify that for the audience.
Well, hang on. There's not just one law. And they're just overturning Roe v. Wade, and the states can decide. And some states may agree that the ectopic pregnancies are okay. Another big issue is encephaly. And that was what I talked about earlier. Yeah, where the baby is born terminally ill. Like its brain is underdeveloped, or it has like a partial skull or something. And a lot of these laws that have been written specifically, like they do not make an exception for encephaly. They don't make an exception for ectopic pregnancy. And, you just said these are politicians that don't know anything about it.
Well, firstly, in the situation of encephaly, it would be, instead of having an abortion, they would do early delivery. The woman would go through labor and birth that child alive.
Yeah.
They would be giving palliative care.
That's horrifying.
Well, it's no more or less horrifying than stabbing the child in the heart with digoxin and watching them go into cardiac arrest for several hours before they die.
Yeah, but who does that? Who does that, Kate? Nobody's like.
That's how late-term abortions are performed for fetal anomalies.
And then Michael Myers comes out with his kitchen knife, stabbing him.
That's how they're performed, Josh. I'm telling you.
I think it is. I think it is far crueler.
Fucking Americans, I swear.
I think it is far crueler to force a woman to go through that experience than to abort the baby. Now, if aborting the baby is a messy procedure, and I agree kind of with Josh on this, but I don't think it's Michael Myers.
Well, no, and I wasn't trying to paint it that way. But for these situations,
you said stabbing it in the heart.
Yeah, well, for these specific situations where there is a fetal abnormality and they know 100% that that child is not going to survive long after birth, in these cases, typically they are at a stage where the process of having the abortion is the baby gets injected through the abdomen of the woman into the amniotic sac with digoxin, and they go into cardiac arrest. This can take hours to days. This is why late-term abortions take a number of days to happen. You have to wait for the baby to die. And then she has to go through the process of labor anyway. That's how they deliver the baby. She has to go through the laboring and deliver process either way. The only difference is that in one scenario, she's birthing a living baby that can be given palliative care. If she wants to have personal time with the child, she can, or they can take the child to another room to have a nurse care for them.
Okay, but what's happening here, you are describing the fact that, like, in one scenario, this woman has a choice and she wants to, meet the baby and live with it. There are women that don't want to do that. And I would say is much kinder to allow their will to be made here, especially in a case where the baby is not going to live either way. Like, again, the idea of using state power against a woman to do that is horrifying.
Yeah.
Well, yes, and the idea of this entire scenario is horrifying. This is a situation where overwhelmingly these are wanted children. These aren't pregnancies that a mother didn't want, and she carried it for 7, 8, 9 months, and then just decided, I've changed my mind.
Yeah, exactly.
These are overwhelmingly wanted pregnancies that unfortunately something went wrong.
So then why do we have to use the state to force it to happen a certain way if the woman doesn't want it? If she wants it, fine. And again, these are wanted.
Brent, would you agree that refusing somebody's service is not the same thing as forcing somebody to do something?
Depends.
Okay, like if I go into McDonald's and I order a burger, and they refuse to sell me a burger, are they
Why would
forcing
you go to
me?
McDonald's in the first place?
Yeah,
Fucking
that's
shithole.
horrible.
Good question, right? Are they forcing me not to enjoy a burger?
So, with regard to something like that, the example that I normally go to is not McDonald's. It would be you are hanging off a cliff by a rope, and someone has the other end, and they say, "Give me your wallet, or I drop you." Is that person coercing you? They're withholding services.
Of course
Without
they
their
are.
services.
Let me ask you a question though. Did that person jump over the cliff themselves and tie the rope themselves and put them in that
How can
situation?
they jump over the cliff? They're holding him.
Yeah.
What do they tie the rope and jump
So
over the cliff? The rope pops and the guy grabs it.
So hang on.
I'm going to say something
Is
here,
that-
Javier. If someone was hanging me by the legs and I'm over the cliff and then he jumped down and killed himself, I'd be fucking happy because I could get out of it, right?
Yeah.
But who put you in a circumstance that changes the context around?
It doesn't change the context of coercion. It absolutely can't. In either case, if you have been brought into an elaborate trap where they trick you into like falling out onto this thing, or if you just happen to be out there and the guy is holding the line, we may feel differently about the guy, but in both cases he is coercing and robbing you. No matter
Yeah, but in the case of abortion, when a woman has laid down and had sex with knowing the risk, then she put herself in that circumstance in the first place. So it changes.
Doesn't affect it at all.
It does.
No,
it does.
why?
Because
you said you didn't want a revenge baby.
it's not a revenge, baby. What I'm saying is context matters.
Baby.
But not in the way that you think it
You're
matters.
trying to make it seem as if the state forced semen into this woman and forced her to get pregnant, kept her against her will, and forced her to have a baby. That's not the way it works.
So what I'm saying is that the state is threatening to kidnap her or the doctor, put them in a cage at gunpoint, since our police, use guns, and presumably if they resist, they could be shot. So yeah, the state is forcing that. Now, it doesn't matter how she got into that situation one way or another. In much the same way, it wouldn't matter. Like, let's say that I agree with Kay, and life begins at conception. No wiggle room. If then I say like, let's say I agree with Kay, and let's say that
Which you all should.
Do I have to put you on the other side there, Brent?
I lost my
Look, I can
I
hold
lost
my
my
own,
train of
and I'll
thought
be
there.
right over here.
Yeah.
But just quickly, I just want to say
no,
something.
I got it again.
You
It
said
came back to me.
revenge baby. Revenge baby. That sounds fucking hilarious. Imagine just being pissed off with your ex-girlfriend, and she goes,
I know, right?
"You know what?
Yeah.
No, I slept with your best friend," and you go, "Yeah? Well, you've got the next 18 years, you little fucking bastards."
What we live in a society now where people are treating babies and children as a clump of cells, revenge baby. Like the way we speak about our offspring and our future is creating an environment where families are broken.
That's called begging the question. It's a fallacy. You are assuming the answer in the premise of the question.
That's what the pro-choice argument is completely. What if this happens? What if that happens?
Dude, I'm okay. The argument, the specific argument that you are declaiming there is a circular argument. You have to decide that it is a baby and it is has personhood before you can then go through the line of logic. So it's circular.
I don't have to prove personhood. I only have to prove life, human life, and we've already established that.
You do have to prove personhood, but whatever. Even if it's
based on who? Based on what? Is that a legal standard?
I mean, if you want to make abortion illegal, obviously it's a legal standard.
No, it's not. All we have a legal standard is life. That's what we have. That's law.
That's no, it's literally not. Oh my
okay,
God,
so you live in a country where it's okay to murder somebody and get away with it, and the state has no interest in it because taking a life apparently is not a legal circumstance.
Personhood is a legal circumstance that we extend to specific members of the species that essentially says that these people are citizens or are humans and therefore deserving of a certain amount of rights, that the state owes something to them. That is not simply.
So do you give more? Do you give more life? Do you give more value on a dog than a human fetus?
Yes.
Sorry, a dog. Did you say a dog?
A dog, a cat, or
I would not murder a dog to protect a fetus.
But
And
a dog is not.
yeah.
A dog doesn't have personhood. It's not a person in the sense that we speak of personhood.
A dog doesn't. Yeah, a dog does not have legal personhood in the same sense that a human.
So
does.
you wouldn't mind if
have a certain amount of personhood in the sense that it is illegal, for instance, to torture a dog.
What kind of dog though?
Yeah, well, Newfoundland, obviously.
All right.
Is it a German Shepherd? Because yes, if it's a Chihuahua, they can fuck off.
Yeah. So what I was trying to say earlier, with regard to this, let's assume I agree with Kay, and I say that life begins at conception. There's no way to get out of it. It just begins at conception. Then how that life began doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the person was coerced. It doesn't matter if the person was acting irresponsibly. These are decisions that we can make specifically about the person who undergoes the procedure, but they have no bearing on whether or not the procedure is ethical or should be legal or not. Because again, we're dealing with life here, not petty grievances where we think like, oh, well, she shouldn't have had sex and now she's getting what she deserves.
Yeah.
Oh my
Let's
God!
let
Nobody
Javier
says
and Kay
that.
have a quick,
I mean, you
let's let
implied.
Javier and Kay have a quick rejoinder to that, and then let's go to Q&A.
Kay, I'll let you have the last word. You can talk as long as you need. I
The
apologize.
bug has been sat there for the entire time listening to these three bellends.
I have very much enjoyed listening to y'all's conversations. I understand, as a pro-life activist, I've been doing pro-life activism for 8 years, and I understand that this is an incredibly controversial and complex topic. And I think that people on both sides of the aisle tend to oversimplify it in the arguments that are made in regards to being for abortion and being against abortion. And we really need to have more conversations about the complexity of this situation. Women that are put... no pregnancy is the same, and pregnancy is an incredibly complex thing to go through. And as someone who does see it as two human beings being involved in a less than ideal circumstance whenever it's a pregnancy that is not wanted, and we should be doing our best to preserve both lives until it is no longer possible for us to do so. And that is my official position on the situation. And I understand that whenever it comes to legislating something like that, it can be incredibly complicated. And I do think that it is very, very important that pro-life activists are vocal in their local communities and in their states as these bills are being passed into law to make sure that we do have protections in place so that women can access life-saving medical care, that we make sure that these politicians are not trying to outlaw removing ectopic pregnancies. And, I have seen those conversations taking place, and I am very, very hopeful that the effort of pro-life activists is going to play out majorly whenever it comes to having conversations about this legislation.
So Kay, did me and Brent change your minds at all?
No.
What do you
Let's go ahead and go to Q&A.
I want to say one thing.
tried, didn't I?
Nobody changes their minds based on one conversation.
I just want to say something real quick.
Q&A, guys.
Okay, all right.
Go ahead, Javi, real quick.
Real quick. I just want to say that based on facts and logic and everything we talked about here, I think the only way to justify a pro-choice argument is a utilitarian argument. It basically says, yes, we understand that is human life, but so what? Kill it. That's the only way I can justify it. Based on the conversation that we've had. We've agreed that we don't know when life begins. We agreed that it is human life. We've agreed on so many different things, but yet for some reason we go to absurd arguments as if the government has no interest in protecting life. It's not a law. So I really think that overall, if you look at this conversation and how it progressed, you will see that most of the major points are in support of being pro-life.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead and go to the Q&A. Okay, from Late Night HVAC for $4.99 says, all murderers have to first lower the value of a human being to justify killing it. We have a choice to abstain, choice to use conception.
Contraception and
Contraception.
No,
But
that's conception.
this is the problem though, because
They said conception. I didn't
when
agree.
abortion is outlawed, people lose access to contraceptives a lot of times as well, and there are many people who are on the pro-life side that also want us to lose access to these things. It's really important to also abortion in the United States was legal before the quickening up until 1860. There were some laws regulating it in like Massachusetts in 1821, but it was 1860 when it was passed. It was passed because in 1850 women started agitating for the right to vote. Now, I'm sure that there are plenty of pro-life activists like Kay who, have, you actually believe this and you're fighting for what you believe in. And I can respect that. But the fact is that so many more of them, and especially the ones that are in actual positions of power, don't actually care about the life at all. What they want to do is exercise power over women for one reason or another.
That is so false. That is so false.
No. Nothing is absolute. Of course, there's people out there that are just trying to exercise what they believe in, like over women. Of course.
But how would he go about proving that? Is he a mind reader? Can he determine who is real and who is just trying to control women?
You can determine by looking at their actions and seeing if the actions are consistent with someone who cares about life, or if they're actually.
Okay, well let me point something out. Conservatives actually do more for adoption. Conservatives actually do more when it comes to giving and to fundraising.
Yeah, that's because they're religious.
Regardless of the point, you can't say they don't care about life when they do it more than the people who claim to be pro-choice.
I'm saying a lot of the people, especially the ones in positions of power, don't actually care about life. What they care about is exercising power over women.
Why?
Okay, look. I just want to say something.
I would have to explain revolution versus reaction to you. That's a long conversation.
Can we drop this statement that says that pro-life, pro-choice doesn't care about life? Clearly we fucking do. Like, I've spoken to Javier and I've spoken to Kay, and they seem like they, I disagree with you, but you obviously care about life. And the same thing is returned to me, Javier.
Yeah,
I'm pro-choice, and when you say that I don't care about life, well, I do care about life. That's why I work at the local homeless shelter in my own country, because I do actually give a shit about life.
I'm just saying that if you make a pro-choice argument, then we have to be honest and say it's a utilitarian argument. I'm for women having the right to choose because of the outcomes that it might provide if a woman can have an abortion.
Did you just say that you're
ontological?
Okay, women be able to choose?
Let's move on.
Over this side.
Let's move on from Bezos, anti-bullying agency, for $10 from some other country. If abortion is to be legal, can we agree that the people that caused the pregnancy should have to pay for it, rather than taxpayers like in Australia? I have to pay for other people's pleasure.
Sure.
Does anyone disagree? Can we move on to the next question?
Okay, next one. Amoral panic for $5 says, studies show, analysts confirm, experts agree. Please don't bring math into a moral argument. Is pregnancy a personal issue or a community issue?
Please don't bring mathematics into a what?
Sorry,
say that again.
I don't bring math into anything because I'm really bad at it.
I can answer the second question, whether it's a personal issue or a community issue. I guess that's what they say, right? I'll say this. We didn't even get into this, but as far as population-wise in America, we, for like the past 50 years, we're not reproducing as much to replace the workforce in America. Not only that, for some reason that we haven't figured out why, but men's sperm count is getting lower and lower as time goes on, and we're still trying to understand why. So as far as a population stance in America, I'm talking about studies. You ain't even in America.
You got me.
Yeah, but from a social perspective and a community perspective, I think abortion matters because it has an effect on everybody in the communities in which we live.
Okay.
I just want to pick something up just quickly before we go to the next question. He said, "Don't bring mathematics into it." You can see, like, in some Planned Parenthood, there was this guy just doing times tables, and like a few armed guards come in, like, "Oi, put them times tables down before I knock you out." Like, fuck,
Yeah. So, by the way, they know what's causing the falling sperm count. It's chemical exposures.
Okay. Well,
it's pollution.
Okay. Yeah, you might be right. Like I said. Last time I looked, they said they didn't know, but you could be right.
Mm-hmm. Well, it may have been that whatever you saw was old, and this is
it's possible.
This came out just last year.
Oh, okay.
$4.99 for Coffee Mom says, can you please explain how you're not giving a fetus special rights when no one can be forced to let anyone else use any part of their body?
I don't. That argument or that question. Look. It's not a special right. That's just like saying if you said gay rights as far as to get married, right? Well, somebody could make the argument, well, a gay person can marry a heterosexual person. They have the right to get married. Then you would say, well, they got a special right to marry a homosexual person, right? Like, it wouldn't make sense. Like, of course, we see that as a right because it's a life form. We're not arguing that they have an extra right to live off someone. We make an argument that they have the extra right to. They have the right to live.
What you're arguing, though. You were specifically arguing. It's very much the same as if you argued that a person who needs a kidney to live, and the only person doesn't want to give them their kidney, the police can come in and force them to cut the kidney out of them.
No, that only if the person that needs a kidney only needs a kidney because the person we need the kidney from took their kidney or forced them to.
Well, that doesn't answer this because nobody forces a woman to become pregnant most of the time.
But the woman made decisions that led to her pregnancy. You keep ignoring that fact and making it seem as if she's just walking down the street. These women are not married. They're not married. They're not virgin married. They just don't pop up pregnant. And you're taking away agency by saying they're forcing this. She did that to herself.
Okay, so first off, she didn't do it to herself. There are two people involved in this.
But she opened her leg. She allowed him to put it in.
Oh my god,
some fucking
dude,
guy
that's
got
gross.
hard. What the fuck you on about?
Like, seriously, like that.
All right,
that's
let's move on.
completely
Let's move on.
inappropriate.
That was a ridiculous statement.
All right,
Is that not how sex works?
Mate, I've had sex loads of times. I know how it works.
We're all adults. We're all adults.
Let's move on.
I can see Kay in the background just rolling her eyes, going, "These fucking men."
Okay, from
This
Soda
is
Cabbage for
about life
$10.
and death. It's not about your petty ideas about when someone should have sex or not.
I didn't say when somebody should or shouldn't have sex. All
Yes,
I said
you
was
did.
the result
All
of
right,
getting.
all right,
Will
gentlemen.
you both shut the
It's all
fuck
right.
up for 1 second?
Gentlemen, let's go to the next question, shall we? Shall we go to the next
Fucking
question?
hell.
Soda Cabbage for $10 says,
Fucking
"Is
Christ,
person
like a bunch of seagulls on the fucking coast?"
is person a useful category? Might sound metaphysical unless we just mean who is given legal and ethical protections. Maybe we should be practically pro-choice."
Yeah.
Actually,
that's
Brent, this is something I wanted to ask you about, actually, right? So, because like I've never understood this concept of personhood. Okay, and Javier, I'm sure you may agree with me on this. Like, what's personhood? As I said, like in Europe, it's always been about like when someone is now deemed a human being, right? So, like you're in. Kay, you would understand this very well. You've had 2 kids. I had a look at your profile. I wasn't creeping, by the way, but I just had a look at who the fuck you were. But so we would say that after 12 weeks in mainland Europe or in the UK it's 20, like this person is now a human being. Personhood sounds like a kind of like a philosophical argument. Do you guys agree with that? It sounds like
it absolutely is.
It's arbitrary. It's arbitrary.
It's just okay. Personhood, essentially, in like sociological and legal understandings of the term, is when we consider a particular human organism to be worthy of rights and responsibilities. And these things can be extended or stripped from people by the rest of society. A good example would be, for instance, it is illegal to make someone a slave, but the United States government can strip them of that particular piece of personhood and imprison them in an actual penitentiary and force them to do work against their will. It literally can make them a slave, and it actually says in I believe the Bill of Rights that that they are slaves. So it's a philosophical and legal designation as opposed to I would guess a material fact. There is who is and is not a person is always just a matter of opinion and power.
Which I don't personally think taking the route of personhood, it gets us very far. And I would wish to avoid it because it's up for interpretation. And as long as we can...
It's important because we need to understand that like it's separate from life, particularly because there's a lot of situations where someone is alive but not a person. For instance, death row inmate going to be going to be executed.
So if you don't mind, Kaz, I've actually got a comment here from my family member who just messaged me on Facebook Messenger. So they said I'm
super chats through Josh.
Yeah, I know. Hang on. So it basically says, you're doing really well, but you're still a cunt.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Josh,
fuck you too.
that could you should just get a shirt that says that.
Well, I tried.
Anybody
before.
want to second that notion?
Chat. Does anyone want to call me a cunt? Just do it now.
Nah, man. Trust me, I've seen worse.
Well, that's reassuring.
So Marty Mad Scientist for $5 Canadian says only for K. The rest of you,
I read
should
that
it
comment.
be illegal for women to engage in dangerous activities while pregnant?
No.
No.
No. There is a divide between intentional killing and what happens accidentally. Now, I argue that obviously a fetus is a human being, and so I see pregnancy as it is a situation involving two equally valuable, equally valid, equally deserving of protection human beings. But we also have to recognize that this situation is taking place inside the woman's body.
I'm
And
sorry.
while that's
So I have to ask. So you're saying like if an 8-month pregnant woman went motocross racing, you'd be cool with that?
I think that there should be that we already have
Should it
these
be
laws in
illegal?
place. Should it be illegal? No. But we already have laws in place. Like pregnant women cannot drink. They cannot smoke. You're going to get in trouble with Child Protective Services if you are doing drugs, drinking, smoking while you're pregnant. Now, we should absolutely be I think that's more of like a societal thing. Societal shame does go a long way, especially for mothers. If you're seeing an 8-month pregnant woman doing like motocrossing, I would expect that the average person is going to go up to her and be like, "What are you doing? You're putting yourself at extreme risk, not to mention the life of your baby."
This is really key to understand, because under a lot of the laws that states are passing or already have passed, women who get in car accidents and miscarry as a result could be charged with manslaughter. And in fact, that not exactly that situation, but a very similar situation wound up happening in Texas recently, where the cops literally came, like grabbed a woman, were getting ready to charge her because she had miscarried, and that they had decided that she had
Brenton,
maybe
you're
gotten
not
an
for
abortion.
that, Brenton? You're against charging extra for harming a pregnant woman? You're totally
Again,
against that, Tyler?
no. What I'm saying is that the cops literally went and grabbed a woman who had miscarried and tried to charge her like with manslaughter and arrest her. That happened just like a couple of weeks ago.
It's not the same thing as
If a
murdering
woman is
someone.
driving, let's say 10 miles over the speed limit, we've all gone 10 miles over the speed limit, I assume, and she gets into
little
a
bit more
car
than that,
wreck. There is a direct line of logic that you will see, and people will probably wind up prosecuting it as manslaughter.
Well, I think that's why it's important to always go back to, and this is what I go back to with pro-life activists being, aggressive and vocal whenever this legislation is being written, because as you will have noticed, all of the pro-life bills that have been passed into law thus far haven't passed until they have civil and legal protections for pregnant people. This has always been the official stance of the pro-life movement all the way back in the 60s, before Roe v. Wade was even a thing. Having protections for the pregnant person. So this is the focus is not on the woman, and we have cases like what happened in Texas. It's happened before even all of these anti-abortion bills even started passing into law. We had isolated cases of women being arrested and being prosecuted for miscarriage. Is unfortunately something that happens. Pro-lifers are very, very vocal about these situations and how they don't support it, and this isn't okay.
Okay, so my
important.
return question on that, if you don't mind, Kay, is how would you combat that? Because the state is going to enforce laws. So let's just say tomorrow, Texas says if you have a miscarriage, you're going to jail. And I understand it's a hypothetical, but how would you address that?
I think that, as broken as our current legal system is, this is actually
1776 was a mistake.
The one time that this actually plays in our favor is the fact that politicians' number one goal is getting reelected.
Correct.
And the reality is that the majority of the pro-life movement, this is actually what divides pro-life activists from what we call abolitionists, is the fact that we do not support passing pro-life legislation that does not have these legal and civil protections written into it. And so whenever you're having these bills presented, and we have had quite a few bills presented that did not have these legal protections or actively stated that they were going to charge women with murder or manslaughter if they obtained abortions. You have these bills always being kicked back and like, you need to fix it or we're not supporting it. Pro-lifers have thankfully been very, very vocal whenever these bills are presented. Like, no, this isn't okay. This isn't what we support. And if you're going to try to pass this bill, we are pulling support from you.
And I'll be
And
right
given
there
that the
fighting with
majority,
you.
and thankfully the majority of the Republican base is pro-life. These are pro-life people, and these are the people that you need the support of in order to get reelected.
Well, I think I have to really honestly say, you two, in terms of the pro-life argument, like I've got a lot of respect for both of you, because you're constantly consistent in what you're saying, and also me and Brent, for example, when we bring up things like that about legislation, what would you do here? You're constantly looking at safeguards. Mm-hmm. I appreciate that. I think that's a good thing. And this is a really, really good platform, because I think personally, us four together, clearly two separate, there's a platform here that we can actually communicate on. And I think one of the worst things in politics in today is that we can't have this kind of conversation where, where we have a difference in opinion. And, I think social media is one of the biggest problems for this, where people shout each other down and stuff like that. But, there's clearly something that we can talk about it. Mm-hmm. We can communicate, and we can come to a middle ground. So I'm just going to say, before I know that we're in the 12 minutes left to go, that I actually appreciate, what your stance is. I don't agree with it, of course, but I appreciate your stance, and I appreciate the fact that you're willing to come to the table and sit down and say, here's our argument. What can we do about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would appreciate. I'm sorry, Javi. Why don't you go first?
Oh, I know that question was only for Kay, and we all started. Well, I didn't talk, but everybody had a piece. I know he's trying to get the questions, but if you go ahead, Brent, and he can get back to the question.
I was just going to say I would be much more comfortable with the pro-life laws, even though I disagree with them, if they were being written by people like Kay, people who are actually
Kay 2024.
Yeah,
everybody in 2024.
I'm not a fan of. I'm not a fan of liberal democracy, but I'll tell you what, I definitely would vote for you, Kay. Guys,
I'm not old enough to run yet.
How old are you?
You'll eventually.
I'm 27.
Oh wait, so hang on. Wait, when can you run for president of the US?
35.
President, you got to be 38, 40. 40.
40. Okay, right. Okay. Well, I'm going to give you a bit of advice. All right.
All right. Let's go to the next question from Mr. Monster for $5. Says the fetus.
We got an after party. Y'all. Y'all got to let them get to the question. The people that pay.
Go on. All right.
Mr. Monster for $5 says the fetus does not have a bodily autonomy if it cannot live outside the womb before it's ready for birth.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Bezos' anti-bullying agency for $5 says for Hilditch, they crush the fetus's skull, pry the limbs off the torso, and then vacuum the rest out. They literally do this.
It's just
okay.
appeal to emotion.
Listen. Okay. Who? What was this guy's name?
Bezos's anti-bullying.
Bezos. Jeff Bezos is
They're gonna dox you, Bezos.
Okay. Number one, Mr. Jeff Bezos, go run fucking Amazon. I don't want to talk to you. Number two, do you think this is fucking Lord of the Rings or something? Calm your fucking tits, okay? Are you fucking having a laugh? Of course they don't literally just rip it out of the fucking vagina and slam it on the ground and then they get a sledgehammer or something like that. You're fucking mad. Get over yourself.
I'll say this. I've seen some disturbing footage about abortions, but at the time that I saw it, I wasn't able to verify it. But I know it freaked me out enough to know that I didn't want to see that type of stuff. So I can't necessarily weigh in on exactly how every procedure is done or whatever the case may be.
If
so
you're ever interested, I can walk you through all of them.
I would rather not. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't want to have nightmares.
Rather not.
All right.
Yeah,
$5 from Sunflower says, Brenton, what if we imposed a $50 fine for elective abortions? It wouldn't be a felony, but you'd just be fined $50 for purely elective abortions. Thoughts?
How would you how would you go about like deciding if they're elective abortions or not? Like, obviously people who go in to have an abortion, like they're doing it for a number of different reasons. And I honestly, I don't see someone going in and having abortion after abortion because they just want to use it as birth control or just for no reason. Like maybe there's one person doing that, but I guarantee you she shouldn't be a mother. So like I would say there's already a fine in the fact that you have to pay for the medical procedure. So like it's not like they're just handing these things out for free, particularly not in the United States.
Great.
All right. From Mango T says for $2.99, Javier won the debate single-handedly. So you have a fan out there.
K help. K, you good with the legal aspect of it. Really, really good. I appreciate having you here.
Did this guy have to pay him like to say that? He can...
All right. From Pseudonym for $2 says, why men so pro C? B, TAS. Why not private, no politics? I don't know what this means, Pseudonym. I'm sorry. I asked you what you were saying.
Some of these people are barely literate. I have no idea.
All right. From Soda Cabbage for $10. Is human and human being the same? Emphasis on being. Is being experimental or a metaphysical?
Okay.
I'm just checking it. Experiential or metaphysical soul.
Okay, right. So first of all, that sounds like something like an episode out of the X-Files.
Let me just finish the question. Hold on 1 second. Is human and human being the same? Emphasis on being. Is being experiential or metaphysical? Soul given at conception. Making pro-life religious. Should we legislate religion? There you go.
No.
Yeah, no, we should not legislate religion. But so what's happening when we're talking about like human being, personhood? Our language is not developed enough to give us a different word for all these different terms. So what we're having to do is mix and match. That's how language works. It's an abstract. It's a system of symbols and signs, and so it can be a little difficult to talk around things that we don't have a word for in our culture. So that's why people are getting kind of tripped up. So there's no big philosophical problem there. It's just confusion, and so usually this devolves into playing word games.
I second that.
All right. From Pseudonym for $2 says, at Kate, what about the movie Sparta? The troll ruined it.
This is Sparta!
Oh, you're talking about the troll dude with the hump on his back.
Yeah.
How does this look? This is one thing I love about America, where you can just twist something into something completely irrelevant. He was like, "Yeah, well, you're pro-choice, pro-life, right? So what about that guy when he was at Thermopylae? What the fuck about Thermopylae? Are you okay? Have you been having too much fucking crack, mate? Like, are you all right?"
You know what's the movie? So 300 is better because they actually changed something really stupid that Frank Miller had put in. Because like the troll guy showed up in the comics. Yeah, no, it's comics, man. I'm going to talk about it. The troll guy shows up in the 300 and is just like, "Hey, I want to fight with you," and Leonidas is like, "No, you're just not good enough." In the movie, they were like, "Well, you can do something else, just not it because you can't get your shield high enough." But like, yeah, it's so basically the movie is slightly smarter than the comic.
Yeah. Right. From Big Buckin' Empire for $4.99 says, "K is my hero. Keep it up, girl."
What about me, people? Can you not spend some money on me?
No love for either of you. Okay. For Sunflower says, from member for 10 months says, Dems in office don't care about choice either.
No, yeah, they definitely don't. Yeah, they're horrible people.
Politicians don't give a shit about anything.
Yeah, right, exactly. Okay, so Brent's an anarchist, and I don't know if you... Look, this person that just said this comment, I don't know if you've realized, but if you actually listen to my voice, I'm not actually American. So I can't vote Democrats.
Yeah, the Democrats are absolute garbage. They don't care about life. They only care about themselves.
Josh is Australian, people. So don't forget to like.
G'day, mate. How you going?
For $1.99 says, if you shoot a woman in the womb, charged with murder.
Double homicide.
Double homicide.
Yeah, that would be double homicide.
Yeah. And I don't think anybody will argue that shouldn't be the case. And I think...
Well, actually, little tidbit, something interesting. They tried to propose a bill. I knew somebody personally. They proposed a bill that would make this law. I believe it was in Colorado a number of years ago. And the pro-choice, I don't know if it was Pro-Choice America or if it was NARAL, like openly and verbally opposed the bill because it granted a level of personhood to the fetus.
Yeah, okay. So one thing I'll say to you, Javier, actually, over the course of this debate, we were talking about double homicide. I'm going to give you another bone here. I've given you quite a few bones. So
I'm like a dog over here. I'm just getting all the bones.
Just stack them over in the corner over there. But you're absolutely right, because in the United Kingdom, for example, like 3 weeks into your pregnancy, if someone walked up and killed you, then you're going to get charged with double homicide. So,
Mark Reed is our last question.
Oh, he's going to cut me off. Okay, fair enough. But
Right.
Go on.
Let people know.
Go on.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah. So what I was saying is clearly like defined by law. They would be saying that that embryo or whatever would be becoming a life. So I'm going to throw you that bone again. I disagree, but there's that.
Yeah, I would say, how crazy would it be if a guy murders a pregnant woman, for the pro-choice people to show up and be like, it's not a baby, it's like a clump of cells, he shouldn't be a double murder. We would never see that, right? And,
no, of course not.
Yeah, and because inherently it makes sense.
Happened. It actually happened in a town over from me, where a pregnant lady, and she was only about 6 weeks in, right? So that's well under the 24 weeks that you can get an abortion. She was stabbed and killed. Horrible situation. And she was he was charged with double homicide, because we understand that she wanted to go through the pregnancy, therefore that thing would have become a person. I get that,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm with you, and I think that's a very good point that you made there. And actually, one of the things that I've had in this conversation today is when you brought that up and we had that conversation, that's actually made me think twice. Now, I'm not going to change the opposition of the field.
Yeah, right. Brent is probably like, he's the worst partner ever. He just
me and Hilditch have been friends since like 2014.
I'm probably the strongest partner he's ever had on a date. would you say so, Brent?
Is the strongest partner I've ever had? Well, because that's Ben Burgess.
He's a cunt. All right, from Witsit Gets It for $4.99 says 1776 was a mistake. Brits don't get to tell us what to do anymore. We already settled that disagreement, my guy. Let it go.
Okay, no worries.
I think it was a mistake. We would have
you see this little middle finger here? Swivel, you little colonial bastard.
And from $1.99 for Witsit Gets It says, so women can kill my baby against my will?
What?
What?
He's talking about in cases of abortion where the father doesn't want the abortion to take place, but the woman goes through the abortion anyway.
I thought there was just going to be like some sort of mass shooter going out, like some woman with a fucking baby in her stomach, just going around and killing baby.
That kind of goes to the point.
Ultimately, it's the woman's body. She's got to be the one that makes the ultimate decision on that. That would be incredibly tragic if it happened, and the father did want the baby, but the father isn't going to have his body occupied by this by the baby. He's not going to be able to carry it. So I think we just have to side with the woman on that.
I did my best to address that point, whereas like a baby is made up of half the father's DNA, but we wouldn't consider it to be his body. Technically, yes, the baby is growing inside the mother, and that technically makes it different. But at the same time,
it definitely makes it different. Like, it's
it
a
definitely
very relevant difference.
Yeah, it definitely makes a difference. But at the same time, I don't agree that is the woman's body. The baby is not the woman's body. It just happens to be inhabiting the woman's body.
No, I would agree with you. The baby is not the woman's body. It is just inhabiting. You're totally right on that. My issue again is when we weigh the rights of the woman against the rights of the fetus, and the woman is unwilling, I just don't think it's a good idea to send the police after her or the doctors.
All right, from Sky Scion for $4.99 says, I really hope the pro-life side didn't take the Fauci ouchie. They publicly admit they contain aborted baby cells. Stay organic.
Sorry, so the Fauci what?
The COVID vaccine.
my God,
Ouch.
mate.
Ouch.
Oh.
Are we really having this discussion, honestly?
No,
Like,
we're not gonna have this discussion, Kay, because I don't know what this guy's problem is, but he was like, babies, fucking COVID.
they are not aborted fetal cells in vaccines, people. There are not aborted fetal cells in vaccines.
I bet this guy just like he thinks that like there's this hospitals out there in like fucking Kentucky, and there's this guy with this giant syringe just coming in, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna put you with the COVID vaccine, and then you've had a miscarriage. Sorry about that.
There is a bit of a conversation. I'll draw a pearl out of this. There's a bit of a smart conversation to be had around like the topic of like forced vaccines versus forced pregnancy. And, if you look back, just 100, 200 years, the anti-vaxxers were all on the left. And the United States did impose forced vaccines.
That. You're giving people ammunition. What are you doing?
As somebody that grew up in the anti-vax community, I will actually argue that the majority of the anti-vax community was liberal to left up until the COVID vaccine.
Yeah.
Brent, I got a question. Brent,
this
is a question from... Let me
love
see.
these extra super chats that are coming
from
in through phones.
Bean Bang. He said, Javier, ask Brenton if men can get pregnant. Good timing.
This is going back to the time I debated. So there was a guy that I debated who was a performance artist, kind of a professional cable news clown. And he was trying to say, like, can men get pregnant? And I was pointing to, for instance, like there was I think like a 50-year-old man in England who had a functional womb and went into menopause.
It's next door.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if that guy can carry the baby, but he could have, according to the doctors, at least if somehow sperm had met an egg in that womb, he could have become pregnant. I just don't know if he could have carried it to term.
I know.
Yes, men can get pregnant. Everybody needs to move on and find another talking point.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I really like you.
We will go down the whole rabbit hole, but I'm more than likely... I'm willing to come on and have a discussion about whether men can get pregnant or not, because I don't think men can get pregnant. But I'm not.
It's an important philosophical.
I'll tell you something that, Javier. Every single time I go to the pub on a Saturday, I wake up and I think I'm pregnant.
All right, $5. Last question. $5 from Mark Reed says, would the anti-abortion side accept abortion if an artificial womb existed that we could raise the fetus in? Would the pro side recommend this?
I can speak on that because we actually do have the very, very, very early primitive stages of having external wombs. This is something that we may actually see take place in our lifetime.
I think they've already grown a fetus outside of the womb.
They have, but we're still in the very, very primitive stages. But this is something that could happen in our lifetime. Now, in regards to the question is kind of ill-phrased, and I bet they're going on the dictionary definition of abortion, which is just to end a pregnancy. Terminating the life of the fetus would be essentially eliminated in the case of having external wombs. Now, I have debated abortion supporters that have argued that abortion should still be legal and an option, even if there are external wombs. So that's a conversation that we're probably going to see more of as the technology advances.
Well, I would say just to come back on that, Kate. Like, of course, I'm all about like presenting people with more options. Okay, so the more options for me, as someone who's I guess a market anarchist, in a way a libertarian, the more options that you have as a person, the better. Okay, so but I understand what you're saying, and as technology increases, and bearing in mind, I just want to say now, I didn't get a chance to say this the entire podcast. I don't like abortion. I think we should do things to reduce abortion. Abortion is not some sort of funny thing. Like, I don't wake up in the morning after I've been to a Maidstone United game and then walk down to my local cafe and have a full English breakfast and go, chaps, do you want to go have an abortion today? Okay, that's not how it works. Like, abortion is a serious, serious problem. And we should look at ways at reducing it. Okay?
I would argue if they found a way to grow the fetus outside of the womb, if by removing it from the mother and placing it somewhere else where it can grow fully, I think that we would have an obligation, in my opinion, that it's either that or go through the pregnancy. I don't think that you should be able to get an abortion if there's a valuable option, especially if you can grow that fetus outside of the womb.
Yeah, but I'm
against
against. I've seen this many times myself. I'm simply against the state mandating this sort of stuff, and I understand that may be a contradiction to what you believe in. But you know, like when the state does things, typically it goes bad, right? So that's why me and Brent are on this side, because I think, as I said before, you know, I prefer there was no abortion. There was 0 abortions every year. I prefer that, you know, but we don't live in that kind of world. But
I agree with you. I think the government is horrible at a lot of things, right? I'm not for a big government type thing, but I still think that...
Take a little rectangle and I'm going to have to put it right there.
Yeah, I think that her government is horrible, but I still think the government has certain obligations, and that's where I fall in.
Absolutely,
to where,
I agree with you, but I don't think that the obligation, you know, intruding into someone's personal life is the way forward.
But I mean, they already do it. Would you be against? Would you be for?
They already do it, but that doesn't mean it's.
I'm saying, would you be for the government getting out of the medical industry altogether? They can't ban any procedures. They can't ban any medicines. Would you be for that? Because ultimately, that's what we're saying when we say that we're not for the government being involved.
Do you see what's on the wall right here?
Oh, I'm asking Hill this, but I get you, Brent.
First of all, like in the United Kingdom, so we have the NHS. You've probably heard of the NHS. The NHS is a delegated body. It makes its decisions itself. So the government actually, yes, of course, there's certain laws that sort of filter down into the NHS, but the NHS are the people that say this is a legal procedure, this is not, you know, so forth and so on.
Are they the same people that ban all of the good food that we have here in America because it's too unhealthy?
The NHS? No, that's a different department of ministry. But
I'll just say, Josh, you know, honestly, the dick move for Britain to conquer like the whole world in search of spices and not use any of them.
Yeah, I know. Like, I always get that on every single podcast. You got all these spices, you got shit food. Yeah? Fucking have you seen our country? Yeah, go on.
You guys ready to wrap it up?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I can wrap it up. This has been fun.
We should give like a little 5-10 second, you know, wrap up for each of everybody, I think. So you can plug yourselves and stuff like that. I think that'd be good.
Yeah, I think so too.
Why don't you start, Javi?
All right, I'm Javier-Javier. Make sure you say it twice. I'm the host and the creator of the Javier-Javier Show on YouTube. That's Javier, not H. Okay, and you can find me there. So please come over, subscribe, and enjoy the conversations that I'm having. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Javi. Okay.
Brent. Sorry, yeah, okay.
I'm KayFellowz. You can find me under my name on pretty much every social media platform. You should also follow my ethical life organization that we just started back in November of last year. Super excited about it. We're called Protecting Life Through Ethical Accountability. You can find us at Plead Justice on all social media platforms.
Thank you. Brenton?
Yeah, so I am Brenton Lengel. You can find me on YouTube. Just search my name. I'm the only one in the world. And I talk about politics, art, philosophy, Buddhism. I've also got my comics out, Snow White Zombie Apocalypse, whose first trade is still available. We're going to be printing it very soon. And Daruti, Shadow of the People, which is what this background behind me comes from, about anarchist Buenaventura Daruti. And definitely check out Kay. She's awesome. I follow her. Everybody should. No one should ever follow Hilditch for any reason. And stay very far away from the Fakertarians podcast.
I'm neutral.
What the fuck?
Josh?
Well, I don't know how to start here because this little fucking wanker over here just gave a good stab. But my name's Josh Hilditch. I'm on the Fakertarians podcast. I've actually forgotten the URL, but you can go onto Facebook and look up Fakertarians. That's our page. I'm on there every 2 weeks. So if you like what I have to say, I suspect you don't, then you can hop on over and have a look. Brent was on there one time, but by the way, I just want to say one thing. Brent, you're a fucking absolute cunt. I put you up the entire fucking podcast, and then you fucking drill me like that at the end. Wanker. But anyway.
That's what you get for interrupting my opening statement.
I interrupted it once.
3 times.
What bullshit? I'm going to rewatch it. Yeah. You're more than welcome to come and watch my, me and the other guys' podcast. If you want to come on the show, just send me a message on Facebook. My name is Josh Hilditch. There's not many of us. So I'm the one with the Max Stirner
Mhm.
profile picture. Send me a message. We'll bring you on.
Yeah,
All right.
check out Figuritarians. It's a very fun podcast. And yeah, I was on once. Thank you very much, Hilda.
Okay, we'll take you on as well if you want.
And I am Kaz, and I'm the guest moderator on this channel today. Thank you guys. And we're going to have an after show on my channel today. I believe a couple of you guys did say that you wanted to pop on at least for a little bit.
Yeah, I'll
I
pop
really
on.
do appreciate that. Thank
Sure,
you
send
so
me
much.
the link. I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
It's already in the
I
private
got it.
chat.
Oh,
I
see.
got a little bit.
So
Yeah, we can hang out.
come pop over to my channel, guys, after this is over, and we'll continue the discussion there. Other than that, I want to thank the moderators in the chat. Thank you to James for creating this platform for all of us to share our ideas. Thank you to the audience for tuning in, for sharing your questions and concerns. Thank you to everybody who sent super chats and elevated the conversation. Thank you to the debaters. You are the lifeblood of the show. You make everything happen. Like the video if you loved it. Share it if you want to spread it, and subscribe as we have many more debates coming your way. Our speakers are linked in the description below. Check them out. Do it now. Have a great night to everybody. And remember, keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable. Good night.
Peace.
Peace, boys.